Justin Hampton with the Compensation Tool, and I'm excited today for another Comp Tool Tuesday because we've got some pretty cool polls that I want to talk about today. So we've had some really kind of great responses come through on a couple of different polls that we run the last couple of weeks that I think that are actually super duper interesting, super timely, and had 700 votes and then 500 votes respectively. And I think these are a couple of things that are top of mind for a lot of us in the compensation industry. And one of the things we'll talk about first is the most recent poll. What aging factor are you using for your surveys this year? So if we think about how we age surveys and why we age surveys, it's really, the idea is because we want to keep up with market movement, because most surveys are published annually or quarterly. And by the time we actually get that data, a lot of those effective dates are even older than what they were when we finally get them. So they're a couple months old at least. So what is it that we're using? What is it that companies are using to kind of make sure that we're keeping up with wage movement? And I think a lot of us have heard, oh goodness, we are seeing 8% inflation, but as we all know, as compensation practitioners, we don't want to market price our jobs based on cost of living. Nope, we need to base our jobs and kind of what we pay those jobs and what we pay people based on the cost of labor. We want to make sure that we are paying competitively based on labor rates, not something else. So here's one of the interesting things. We asked the question, what aging factor are you using for your surveys? And 14%, so 1 out of 7 companies has an aging factor of less than 3%. Now, this is a poll with over 700 responses. So if we think 14%, what is that? It's about 100 responses. 100 different companies are aging their surveys less than 3% this year. I mean, that's almost what we should have been aging it over the last couple of years. So unless you are not aging your surveys and looking at that a different way, maybe you're using a different market percentile instead of aging your surveys, which I'm not sure if that's the approach I would take, but I know it's an approach that some people do take. But we've got a lot of people that aren't moving that data or aren't accounting for inflation or cost of labor changes at all. Now, the next category was I'm aging my surveys between 3 and 4%. I was actually shocked, and we had a couple other folks that kind of came and commented that they were actually quite shocked at the number of people that actually said this is what they were aging their surveys at. So between 3.00% and up to 4.00%. So if you're aging your surveys between 3 and 4%, 65% of companies are aging their surveys between 3 and 4%. Tell me about that. That's what I was aging my surveys in a normal year, where we were seeing normal kind of movement in the market, where you had that kind of very standard 3% of inflation every year. That's what we were expecting. That's what we were seeing. I've been doing that for the last 10 years, where you age your surveys 3%, whether or not you lag the market, lag the market. So how is it now that we've got inflation of 8+%? And also we've got some nice information that Brian Briscoe provided in the comment. It's not just cost of labor, it's not just cost of living. It's not just the cost of goods that's increased so much. No, actually, the Department of Labor released a note back in June of 2022, where they're actually tracking the cost of labor, what we should be measuring and basing our aging factors on. So what is the overall cost of compensation increases from the period of June 2021 to June 2022? It's 5.1% this year. So if you're at a 3 to 4% aging factor, you are 1 to 2% behind what the market is telling you compensation has moved. Just for example, if we think of what did the market do from the period of 2020 to 2021 in June, it was only 22.9%. If we look at just wages and salaries for the same period from June of 2021 to June of 2022, again, this is cost of wages and salaries. This is not cost of living or cost of goods. That was 5.3%, so a little bit higher than total cost of compensation. In June of 2021, or from June of 2020 to 2021, that number was 3.2%. So we're seeing, what is that, about a 70% greater cost that we've seen in the previous year. What about cost of benefits? Cost of benefits from June, I'll start with the low one first. From June of 2020 to June of 2021, that increase was 2.2%. This year, from June of 2021 to June of 2022, it was 4.8%. That's more than double what it was previously. And this is looking at all industries. If we look at the private industry, the numbers are 5.5%, so almost a 10% greater increase. Previous year was 3.1%. If we're looking at wages and salaries alone, that's a 5.7% increase versus a 3.5% increase. So if you're aging your surveys between 3 and 4%, or even 4 to 5%, that is less than what we were seeing the cost of labor moving at. So I would really kind of encourage us to kind of come back as compensation practitioners and say, if our job is to make sure we're competitive and we're not keeping up with the labor market, not cost of living, the labor market that we are seeing change dramatically like this, how is it that we are doing our organization right by increasing or aging our surveys at a number less than what we're actually seeing the market moving at? Now, I don't know if this is coming back, and the finance team is coming back and saying, we can't afford that, we don't like that. Well, not liking it doesn't mean it's not true. we need to find a way that we can move we need to at least know aging your surveys doesn't require you to change people's salaries. That's already happening through the different mechanisms such as merit, through market adjustments, through those things. But if you're going to keep up with the market and you're going to keep up with your midpoints and your ranges based on the market data, you have to take a realistic approach and a realistic stance and move your market data along with the market. So that's where I'm at on that one. I'm going to leave that one alone because there's some other interesting things we talked about. So before we hop into kind of the next discussion around the next poll that had 500 votes, I will say that we are releasing a new Squirrel feature, and we're looking for some beta testers. We're going to kick this off probably the next 2 weeks or so. So if you'd like to get an early jump and get access to Squirrel, we would love for you to sign up with our beta test. So what I'll do is I'm going to put a link in this chat right here. I'm going to try to. Let's see if we do it like this. I didn't like it when I did it yesterday. Let's see if that works. It might not work. And nope, that only posted to YouTube. So what I'll do here is we're going to come in and try and post that on where I'm actually talking right now. But if you can't find it, I'm just going to create a new post actually. So right now, beta test opportunity for Squirrel. So take a look here, sign up at this registration link with your, it does need to be a business email address, but take a look at that post I just posted on LinkedIn. If you'd be interested in taking a look and kind of getting, joining a test and advisory group for a new feature we're releasing for Squirrel, take a look, sign up, register there, and we'll reach out to you in the next week or so. All right, so what's the next one? So the next one is what % of your corporate staff do you expect will be promoted during this year's end of year cycle? So for a lot of us, if we are on a September to October fiscal year, congratulations, you have about 4 days left this is the last week of the fiscal year, which maybe a lot of you are really super busy right now. But it's kind of exciting because you're getting ready to probably look at calculating, how did our company do? What are our bonuses going to look like? Getting ready to start off that merit process. So I thought this was interesting because I've worked for a couple of different companies that have had different approaches with how they promote people. But if we just take a look at this one, the questions were, what % of your corporate staff, do you expect will be promoted during this year's end of year cycle? So the options were less than 5%, 5 to 10%, 10 to 20%, or more than 20% of corporate staff. And kind of surprised that almost half, about 40% of companies said that less than 5% of your corporate staff is going to be promoted this year. About 42% said 5 to 10% would be promoted, and 16% said 10 to 20% would be promoted, and only 2% said that more than 20% of corporate staff would be promoted. So I just thought this was kind of an interesting poll to look at. It's one that I've worked at companies where, we've looked at kind of around that 10% number. I worked at companies where we promoted 25 to 30% of the corporate staff every year. Now, I'm not going to say that, those were best practices, but I do think that it was a best practice for the business where I was at, where the promotions that we all made, reviewed, validated, they made a heck of a lot of sense, especially if you're a smaller company or a really fast or quickly growing company, or if you're seeing a lot of change. Those things do make sense. But just as a way to level set and kind of, check yourself against other folks in the industry, 500 different companies participated in that poll. And we're seeing that 82% of companies are promoting less than 10% of their corporate staff, expecting to this year. So just an interesting point to take a look at. And just on the topic of that, when you are looking at making those promotions for your employees, I think one thing that you have to take into consideration is what kind of a promotional increase do we give our folks? There's actually a really interesting study that was done. There's a couple of them. Frank Giannicola, who is was very prolific and very kind of well-spoken and outspoken on the World at Work forum. He actually wrote an article several years ago that identified that anything less than 7.5% would actually demotivate employees if they were receiving a promotion. And I think this is really important to consider because I've been on that side of the fence where I was at a corporate office, and I think my promotional increase was 5%, 5-6%, something around there. And I know that we as compensation people, we've got these formulas and we look at performance and we look at internal equity and we look at all these other things. But I think we have to be pragmatic about these things too, and understand that if employees have this expectation, whether it's right or wrong, they have an expectation they're going to have, a promotion of 10%, 15%, 20%. That's also why it's really important to communicate and educate your work staff about what's realistic. But if you had this expectation, you're going to get a 10% promotion, and you saw that promotion coming, and you opened up that promotional, like, congratulations, here's your 5% increase. That would not feel like a 5% increase. That feels like you just lost 5% on what you were expecting. So it's really important to make sure you're setting expectations with folks, and you are, making sure that those people kind of have the right expectations, because the last thing you want to do is promote someone and that promotion does not meet their expectations, and they walk away feeling like they lost out on something. So that's another interesting form that I think is really kind of worth considering and taking a look at as you are beginning that end of year process this year. So good luck to everyone that is wrapping up the books right now and kind of thinking like, oh boy, like here we go, another merit cycle. I don't know how many Excel spreadsheets I can handle. Hopefully you're not doing it in an Excel spreadsheet, but I know a lot of folks are, and sometimes those are better tools than some of the ones that are out there, especially if you're working in multiple currencies. I once worked for a company where they made that wasn't me, but they totally screwed up the current conversion rate, and I think we ended up creating a merit budget that was based on one currency. It was totally different than the currency we were paying in. That was a fun mistake to explain to the finance team, but we got through it. So anyway, speaking of opportunities and kind of working at places, one thing I will also point out too is hiring. We're hiring a couple of different roles. We are looking for a business development representative, and we're also looking for a sales development representative. So ideally, we'd love it if you've got a couple of years in compensation or HR or even recruiting experience. We'd love you to kind of reach out to me, shoot us a note. The job is posted. You can see that little purple hiring thing on my LinkedIn profile. But take a look at that. The roles that we've got here. The business development rep opportunity goes. The base pays $60,000 a year with on-target earnings of close to around $100,000 a year. This is for someone with just a little bit of experience in compensation. It's a fantastic team. We're fully remote. We're serious, but we're casual. So we take what we do really seriously, but we also don't feel like it needs to be we don't feel like there's any reason not to be casual. If you've ever flown Virgin Airlines, they get you where you need to be. I mean, at least when they were Virgin Airlines before Alaska bought them, they get you where they need to be. It's a fun experience. They're wearing t-shirts, but it's just professional. It's a lot less stressful than flying some of the other airlines where you've kind of got the suits and the skirts and all that good stuff. So that's kind of what we like to model our culture after, is the actually Virgin Airlines. So take a look. Hope this was a interesting and a useful Comp Tool Tuesday. A lot to cover, a lot of really kind of exciting things. And best of luck for everybody as you get through wrapping up your end of year and starting everything you got going on coming up. If there's anything we can do to help, please reach out and let us know. Thanks a bunch, guys.